All right, welcome to episode 2 of Into the Forest with Pine. Today I have Deebs with me, so why don't you kind of explain who you are and kind of what you do?
Sure. Hello, everyone that's listening. I'm Deebs DeFi. So I currently work at Orbital Command Validator, but I also do a lot of just personal content from Twitter and Substack. And really, my content focus is now on-chain analytics, data insights, and so I try to really just help my audience win, right? I would say that's my number one goal always, right? Whether it be from the orbital command side or myself, I'm always just trying to put out content that's interesting, engaging, and useful. Build useful products and tools to help the greater DeFi ecosystem. I'm obviously like a DeFi user myself. That's how I got introduced into this. And one day someone told me like, because you have these conversations here and there, just with your buddies and your friends, and they were like, "Why don't you start writing?" And so I did, and that was kind of how I had my start.
Awesome. So like on-chain analysis and content creation are both like not very traditional paths. So like kind of how did you come into doing it and like what inspired you to start doing this sort of stuff?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So I think I started the more traditional route, right? I didn't start with on-chain analytics. I started with just your basic curation threads, right? I saw people putting out great content. Um, and I figured, how can I provide value to the crypto ecosystem? So really, honestly, my start happened after the collapse of Terra in Cosmos. I'm sure everyone remembers that day in May. And I saw an exit of influencers in that space, and I said, hey, there's still people here that are naturally devastated, right? That still want content creation surrounding Cosmos, surrounding what's happening, with the future of Terra. So that was really where I started, just providing news and content that was valuable to people. And then over time, I there were a couple just influencers that I saw um, that were doing some great work with on-chain analytics, but we all play imposter syndrome, right? So I was like, oh, that can't be me. How am I going to do that? And I saw all you all on Flipside and Dune, and all this code, and I'm like, this is too big for me. But it was really the Flipside Metrics DAO course that they offered that I jumped in, signed up, and started just watching these videos. And I was only about like halfway through the first course when I was like, okay, this is too much fun. Let me just start building. Um, and admittedly, I really haven't gone back and finished the remaining courses, which I think I need to do. But that was really how I got started.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll all remember Luna. Like I was doing a bunch of on-chain analytics for them when the shit hit the fan. But that's pretty awesome. Like, what are a few lessons that you've kind of learned along the way, like creating content, especially when it's like informative content that like people may or may not, obviously they're not like financial advice, but it's like you do have you're putting your reputation on the line when you put stuff out. So like, what is kind of things you've learned by continually doing that?
Yeah. Another good question. I think you have to find your niche in the space, which is easier said than done, right? It's DeFi Edge, right? Edgy, as most people know him. He put out a thread a really long time ago, and it's one that I always kind of like look back to, and I always recommend to people when they're first starting out. You have to find like the intersection of what you love, right? I'm trying to remember all the circles, but it's essentially what you love, um, what you can get paid to do, and like kind of like what the world needs. So like what audience might want. And so it's not necessarily easy to find this intersection. It usually takes experimentation over time, but I think that's key because a lot of people will get into content creation maybe for the wrong reasons. And they'll either burn out too quickly or they'll just be focused on like airdrop threads and things like that. And you don't necessarily build a community that I guess around your account that is you're really just not building a community. So the general point there is right. You just have to make sure whatever you're doing, you want to find a niche in the market, and it's something that you love. And the other piece to that, right, is he always reminds us, help your audience win. Like, don't gatekeep content. I see a lot of people that do that. Um, I don't see a whole lot of value in that. Whenever someone reaches out and asks me like how I learned SQL, I always offer my help, my expertise, the resources that I use. A lot of my threads are focused on, almost anti-influencer type stuff where I say, I have one coming out soon actually, and the hook line is kind of like, the influencer tells you the next 100x, you buy in, you get dumped on, and so it's like, how do you break this cycle? And so I think if you have focus as a content creator on just helping your audience and forget trying to like hold on to alpha or gatekeep how you're building products, just give it to them and present it. And don't worry about your reach and your creation. Over time, that product is going to speak for itself, and opportunities will come up.
So
So
basically,
yeah, that
like,
was a long answer, but and there's probably more specific insights I could give, but yeah,
yeah, so basically what you're saying is content creation comes second to kind of building something you're passionate about. And if you're building something you're passionate about, the content will speak for itself. So I guess
yeah, absolutely.
switching topics, some of the content you put out has like AI, I assume, images in it, if I'm
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
I've
of course.
I've been doing a lot of that myself, and at Pine, all of our NFTs are AI generated. So I'd love for you to talk about, I don't know, your process on building some AI art and kind of what you think it will do to the creation of content going forward.
Sure. So, I mean, at least for what I use, it's Mid-Journey all the way, right? I'm a Mid-Journey maxi right now when it comes to AI. Maybe something else will come out soon that takes the throne, but for right now, it's great, right? I typically how I go about the process of doing it is I think of an idea, I think of something that would be really grabbing to an audience because we all know people only look at that first tweet and then they typically either move on or they click in. And so your image is super important. So I typically use a mix of Midjourney and Canva. Sometimes I'll take images from AI and then remove the background and put them into another setting inside of Canva. Or sometimes I'll just, the AI is incredible, and sometimes I'll just use that itself. And I think there was like a second part of that question. You were asking about like the future of AI and crypto, or just like,
Or like, how do you think, like, I guess this is a small version of it, but like you're using AI to kind of like create content and like as if you had almost a backup artist. Like, how do you think that's going to change the way like people are doing like content creation, like
oh,
just the art
absolutely. I
side
mean,
that
it
we're,
already has like, um, not that I, not that I'm really gonna name drop anyone, but the simple truth is like there are people out there right now that are using Chat GPT to write threads. Like they are. um, it it improves efficiency. Um, as like a content creator. Now, whether or not that's right or wrong, I guess is potentially another debate. I think right now it still comes off usually it's pretty robotic. If you just like try to create a thread for efficiency's sake, it may not have your style, your flavor. But yeah, AI is completely changing the game, and the people that are leveraging it more and more to build their content tend to be very successful. I mean, you see it all the time. I think it was like, what was it? Like Crypto Hoem, if I'm pronouncing that right. He's been like superimposing people's faces onto other images, and
yeah.
creating these surreal like photos. There's just so many use cases of it that can, bring, at least from a content creation, bring it to the next level.
Yeah, no, 100%. I can't agree with you more. And I saw you doing it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of spreading. Like a lot of people I know are like doing this. It's kind of insane. So, I guess I'm gonna switch topics again and like hop over to the recent flipside competition. So, flipside ran an analyst competition where, uh, it was like a bracket style competition where analysts competed to create like the most compelling data analytics content, spread it to the most people, and every week you move forward and you came in first place. So love to have you talk a little bit about your experience and kind of what it was like creating flipside dashboards and kind of what it was like working in the contest.
Sure. And you're being humble, right? Because you were in the contest as well and made it quite far. But it was great. Like it was a really awesome experience. You know, as I said earlier, I barely made it through the first like class or two. And then I immediately wanted to start building dashboards, and so that's what I did. And it's great, right? Like I think building dashboards is a great way that you can provide value to your audience. Um, like I was saying earlier, like build tools to help them win. Usually, whenever I went into dashboard creation, I would try to not make things a one-off dashboard, right? So not just a cool image to slap on a thread, but something that people could go back to, whether or not it was, watching whales on chain, which I did a lot of dashboards on that, to comparing, what were some of um, the biggest altcoins that no one's talking about outside of meme coins, right? I wrote a thread about that, how I had to like manually go in and remove like hundreds of meme coins because that was the frenzy right now. Um, but it was a great experience. Yeah, a big shout out to Flipside. I know I've mentioned them a couple times, but I really feel like they've helped me develop myself as a creator. So credit where credit is due.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about them. So I guess to just wrap this up, I'd love for you to kind of talk about what ecosystems, projects, and use cases you're excited for in Web3 and kind of what things like, I don't know, excite you and you're interested in and what you think will drive more users, I guess, as well.
Sure. It's interesting right now. So we we have a little bit of, I guess, like upcoming competition between optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, right? And so I'm going to be particularly interested to see the competition between some of these, right? You know, you've got your optimistic rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism and just already existing, right? And they're much more mature, right? And then you have this competing narrative with ZK rollups, and I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not it can actually maybe like steal users, poach liquidity over time. So it's something I'm keeping an eye on. Not necessarily that I think it will happen because again, there's so much maturity already in these layer twos on Ethereum that it's hard to see maybe that happening. But definitely keeping an eye on it. Um, I came, I made my start in Cosmos, and so I'm always keeping a pulse on Cosmos, right? It hasn't gotten what I would say the attention as an ecosystem that it deserves ever since the Terra collapse. But I think that, in due time that will change. There's simple, there's just possibilities on Cosmos in terms of technology that's just not present on Ethereum. Ethereum is great, right? I don't think anyone is going to argue against that, and I think they each have their own place. But the amount of things that are being built over there, from with protocols like Skip, the way that it's taking MEV and building different on-chain solutions for each ecosystem to allow them to take this this hidden value that normally gets, I guess you could say, stolen on chain by these independent searchers and funneling that back into an ecosystem like the efficiencies and the scalability of Cosmos, I think make it really unique. Um, and so I guess even though the focus right now is all L2s, right? It's all like L2s and maybe even layer zeros. I think in due time there will be, as block space becomes more competitive, that discussion about L1s is going to come up again, and I think Cosmos is going to play a pretty big role.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going towards a multi-chain future, and I think like chain our app chains really have their use case, and there's a lot of things that app chains could do that like these generic chains that are just built to throw data through and don't have a specific use case just will never be able to do unless they're specifically designed for it. So I guess thank you for coming on to episode 2 of Into the Forest with Pine.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a pleasure. Appreciate you inviting me.